Uh, Paul, I know that you, more than aspire, you are planning to realize some of these ideas, to actually put them to the test, which is why we've been working closely for the past year or so. I'm not going to steal your thunder. I will ask you to introduce yourself and your session. So this is the third of our pilot projects. Paul.
Thanks, Ian. Can I just plug Rebecca's research again? I think it's an excellent piece of work and a great example of how we can learn from one another. So just dig it out if you get a chance in the chat. This next session builds on the themes Rebecca's introduced to explore the practical delivery of multi-generational neighbourhoods, with presentations from some of the leading proponents of this approach here in the UK. So we'll hear in a moment from Manisha Patel and Caroline Dove from PRP and HTA Architects respectively. Both are leading figures in the UK when it comes to multi-generational neighbourhoods and their design. And they'll be followed by David Orr. David has been a leading light in UK policy, housing policy and delivery for over 30 years. And he's a tireless advocate for social housing, good design, and increasingly homes that are fit for purpose, as in meeting the needs of families and individuals rather than the needs of the UK's volume house builders. Now, with a bit of luck, we'll have some time at the end for a few questions. But first though, let me get this segment underway with a very short scene setter on why we at Clarion think the ISO standard and the whole concept of multi-generational neighbourhoods is so important. So can I just see my first slide, please? Cool, and just the next one. Cool. Now, I like this quote because whilst it acknowledges things are changing and changing fast, it points to not only the challenge, but also the opportunity. And much as we're responding to climate change, we need to wake up to demographic change, particularly in terms of the built environment and our homes. Next slide. Now that challenge is a real one. And here in the UK, we see demographic change being played out in terms of increasing segregation. Next slide. Where different age groups are increasingly much less likely to live together in the same neighbourhood. And there's ample evidence to suggest that this separatism is not good for society or for the individuals involved. And that's often reflected in everything from voting patterns through to higher levels of loneliness and isolation. Next slide. So why are we in Clarion interested in this issue? Well, we're responsible for the homes and neighbourhoods of hundreds of thousands of people. We've been providing social housing for over a century, and we build thousands of new homes every year. And as the UK's largest social landlord, we feel a responsibility to our customers and to our sector to help push the boundaries of best practice. And that includes the delivery and operation of multi-generational neighbourhoods. Now, our regeneration programme, and this is the bit I look after, gives us a vehicle to start turning some of these wonderful ideas and case histories we've heard about all day into practice. Can I have the next slide? And we're particularly supportive of the ISO's multi-generational neighbourhood standard because of the care that's going into its assembly, and of course the weight and instantly recognisable quality that comes with the ISO mark. It represents a collective commitment to best and the sharing and acknowledgement of what works, and will be a useful tool for Clarion as we set out on a path of demonstrating, exploring and innovating alongside our built environment partners. So multi-generational neighbourhoods, we think, are not a nice to have, but should be a core part of our day job of managing, designing and building successful, sustainable communities. Next slide. Our key driver in all this is our age-friendly strategy. And that focuses on three key areas: designing and building homes and communities that adapt and flex to support people through their lives, making sure we have the right homes at the right time, and critically, empowering people to make their own choices and shape their own lives. Importantly, I think, and this has come up a few times already today, age-friendly does not mean older. In our thinking, a play strategy is just as important as thinking about dementia-supported housing within a multi-generational neighbourhood approach. This is about non-segregated, non-fuss multi-generational neighbourhoods. Next slide. Just a couple of quick slides to finish off before I introduce our guest speakers. This is what we now include in the design briefs for our regeneration projects, making it clear before a single line is drawn on a page that we expect to see non-segregated, multi-generational thinking at the heart of the design process from day one, reflecting society as a whole, including the demographic change that's underway, catering for people of all abilities and ages. Next slide. And this is how that plays out in reality. This is our colleague Spiros from PRP Architects, consulting on our High Path regeneration project in South London, in front of what looks like a very skeptical audience. I love this photo. But Spiros remembers it as a very fun event. Just you wouldn't pick that up from some of the looks he's getting. And finally, my last slide is this beauty. This is also in South London. And this is the next regeneration project where we will be starting to apply these principles and our age-friendly strategy. We just got approval to start working on this estate just 2 days ago. And I can't wait to get started and hopefully start to apply some of the brilliant ideas and suggestions that we've heard already today. So that's enough from me. I'm really looking forward now to hearing from our speakers this afternoon. And I think Caroline, or it's Manisha I see, looks like is up first. You ready, Manisha?
I don't seem to see Manisha, so maybe Caroline should jump in and I'll track down Manisha. Yeah?
No problem. Are you okay with that, Caroline?
Yes, I'm in. Oh.
Wonderful. Let's just see if we can get your slides queued up. There we go.
Right. I think I'll turn my screen off just to avoid any possible technical hitches, if that's okay. So yes, I'm Caroline Dull. I'm a partner of HDA Design. We are actually a multidisciplinary practice designing multi-generational neighbourhoods. And I'd like to have the next slide, please. So we've asked ourselves the question, what are the ingredients of an integrated, interactive, inclusive and sustainable community, and how can we best translate these into a new standard for smart, multi-generational neighbourhoods? Multi-generational neighbourhoods designed with communities is the theme of this brief presentation, because if you're going to make places where people can enjoy independent lives in a supported community, a good place to start is to find out from those people what they need and what they aspire to. Working with Clarion and their residents, we're taking a holistic approach to defining what good looks like, setting out some key ingredients for the neighbourhoods for the future. So I'm going to talk about two of these projects, one of which is a good example of how existing places can be transformed to become age-friendly, and one which is a practical way to create a new multi-generational place integrated with existing homes. Sarah asked this earlier, don't multi-generational communities already exist? And yes, they do, but their homes and places often need some rethinking. Many people feel they have no choices as they get older and their needs change, so can't move. But they may also feel isolated and lonely, not in the right home, in the right place. I think the SMART plan is to design achievable and deliverable schemes with choices of the right homes in the right place for the existing communities who will live there. Next slide, please. So our first example is Sutton Dwellings. It's a 100-year-old a social housing estate in the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea in central London. It's a great location, with shops on the ground floor, on the street frontages, and a short walk to the King's Road or the Thames, as well as many other amenities nearby. It's a well-established community, and part of the estate has already been modernised. But the 4 blocks we're looking at, which I can't actually point to you, but they're sort of the lower perpendicular, not the lowest, but the next lowest perpendicular blocks in the picture. And they are at the moment very small, substandard flats, hard to heat, 5 stories with no lift access, no private amenity, and many other issues making them age unfriendly. Next slide, please. But the well-proportioned brick buildings are worth investing in. They've got at least another 100 years life left once they're renovated. And the opportunity here is to renovate for an agile ageing community. We've radically replanned the flats so they're as close to London design standards as possible. In fact, in some cases they exceed. We're transforming the thermal and sustainability performance, and we're involving the existing residents in the design of homes and spaces, mostly online, but last summer we could also be outside, and there we are with a large screen, sort of cinema. Next slide, please. So how can we do this? It is very practical because the existing buildings, the 4 coloured there, are currently empty because they were in such a poor condition that residents had to move out a few years ago. And so when we have done the renovation in each of those blocks, there will be a full range of 1 to 4 bedroom homes, some designed for wheelchair users and all capable of further adaptations. And at the centre, there's going to be a new community garden and new landscape to all the spaces across the whole estate. Next slide, please. So this is actually one of our working drawings to prove that it really is going to happen. It's not just some ideas we've had. And this is showing that we've combined 2 small flats together to make much larger flats, one each side of the stair. And the layouts are flexible, so space can be adapted for home working, hobbies, and for future assistive equipment and technology for independent living. We've added lifts, so all floors will now be fully accessible. And there's going to be lots of insulation internally and much higher thermal performance, improved air tightness, ventilation, and other sustainable enhancements for a low carbon future. Next slide, please. The buildings are restored, the elevation is cleared of clutter with new windows which will be easy to open, and most importantly, private balconies are added. And I like Rinat's point about eye contact with your neighbours, and I think this will encourage a lot of contact with people as they pass by. And there are also green biodiverse spaces that we've added between each block, so there will be places to sit, meet neighbours, informal mingling, as actually Rebecca's just said. Everyone's pleased with the proposals to relocate waste and recycling bins and cycle storage, so they're much more accessible, and this frees up more space for the landscape. Next slide, please. So here are some views of that new shared garden right at the heart of the estate, to be enjoyed and looked after by all generations. There's an existing community of older people as well as families, single people in wheelchairs. The transformations here will make Sutton dwellings much more age-friendly and will sustain agile ageing. So next slide, please. Now we moved south. We're still in London. We're in the southwest London suburb of Merton, which is and this estate is right beside the River Wandle. Ravensbury has all the right ingredients for an active, sustainable and successful place to live. It's surrounded by parks and the Riverside Trail. It's close to shops, GP, transport. And there's an established community, some who've lived there since the 1950s when the houses were built. Next, please. So why regenerate Ravensbury at all? The houses look well laid out. They've got huge gardens. There's lots of trees. Some of the brick-built homes are in good condition and will be retained, but the concrete houses are defective and unmortgageable, and they don't meet modern standards. Older people are finding the large gardens difficult to manage, and small flats with steep stairs are not suitable either. Some even have their children and grandchildren come back to live with them, making quite crowded multi-generational homes. There are other issues. It's in a flood risk zone. There are large mature trees. It adjoins a conservation area. There's quite a few constraints to overcome. And in looking at Ravensbury, we've engaged the community in a very detailed design process, listening to a lot of different opinions and designing their homes to give them the space and amenity they've asked for. Next, please. So we've designed the regeneration of the whole estate in phases. We did initially a master plan for the estate as a whole, and then more detailed design. So phase 1's actually just been completed and people have just moved in there. And the next phases are about to get into their detailed construction phase, and we rolled out on 2 more phases after that. So this illustrates, just from at a glance, it might not look very different in the layout, but what we've introduced more streets and more spaces and more community gardens, which will give a variety of places to meet. And these much better connect to the parks and Riverside Trail. So there's no excuse not to have plenty of fresh air and well-distanced exercise. Next, please. So the layout we've designed here offers a wide range of typologies. We've got everything from 1-bed flats for older people in that dark blue corner block, through to much larger family houses. You can see the red ones by the actually Riverside houses, and then in between a range of houses and flats for everyone. So over time, people can right size and they can stay in this familiar neighbourhood for much longer. Next, please. So we've made all the homes as flexible and adaptable as possible, so they have more space for future needs. And just at Sutton Dwellings, they've got space for potentially home working, homeschooling, hobbies, and then coming into the future, potentially more adaptations. The whole scheme's been designed to be zero carbon, so it should be affordable to heat. And it's been designed to be sociable, places to meet neighbours in the streets and spaces. And there's a community room. So that will also give people, there's one at the moment, but it will be a renewed and slightly larger one. So to encourage the community to come together, both those who are existing residents and then new residents who will be joining this community. Next, please. So finally, I've illustrated here some of the key ingredients for a gold standard for agile ageing, which we've been thinking about. And both schemes actually illustrate these points, but this is obviously the Ravensbury scheme. And they show that we can sustain independent, healthy living, promote an active, sociable, supportive community, accommodate change and offer attractive choices. They're integrated, no segregation of old people. The design is age-friendly and inclusive, and they're sustainable, meeting the climate change challenge, and long-lasting, and bring more benefits to the community as a whole. So these 2 schemes are about to be built, so we'll find out soon if we have succeeded. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Caroline. 2 schemes I know very well, and these are 2 that I'm responsible for, and both have cost me what little hair I have left to get to this stage. I think that what's particularly interesting about them is, although they're both now secured planning, it's going to take a number of years to complete them. And I think we're, yourselves at HTA and ourselves are very keen to use both these examples to learn from, to just see how hard we can push the boundaries a little bit, particularly in terms of intergenerational living and sustainability more generally. So it's going to be very interesting over the next couple of years to see how these develop and how much of the learning that we have already picked up from these two schemes we can start to apply across our regeneration program as a whole. But I'm sure we'll come back to this in the questions. So hopefully, I think we have located Manisha, who was there all along. So Manisha, are you ready to present?
Yes, I'm just